Black Lives Matter. Before video games or before whatever it is we're going to do tonight, the very good is that Black Lives Matter. I think all of us being, online individuals have seen a lot of horrific shit over the past few weeks or months or honestly fucking years. And it's okay to be really messed up right now. But it's not okay to sit on our butts, right? Shit's happening all over the world. And I think it's super important for everybody to get involved. Again, some things in the chat about audio being a little quiet. I don't know if we could bump that up a little bit, Mr. AV man. So, Black Lives Matter. First and foremost, we can't get into any video game nonsense without acknowledging that. Without acknowledging the horrific fucking violence that has been happening, not only in the States, right? Here in Canada, all over the place, all over the world, the hands of police, particularly against Black people. And to jump straight into video games without even acknowledging that feels like a disservice. And sorry to start things off heavy, but I mean, shit's heavy right now. In our description down below, we're going to be throwing some organizations that you could donate to. If you have some free funds to donate to, now is the time for that sort of thing. Everyone always talks about like how during these moments you should listen to folks, right? We should be listening to Black people when they tell us things, when they talk about their experiences. We should be listening to what's being posted on the internet, and the videos that we're seeing in particular, right? And you should educate yourself, but you can't just stop there, right? Like I think there's this thing around white progressives where we tend to listen and we tend to educate and then kind of stop, right? But like if all we had to do was talk and read a book, then the world would be a better place. We have to take action. So that comes in a lot of different ways. Tonight what we're going to be doing is highlighting a few different charities that you can donate to. Don't feel like you have to, wear this charity donation on your sleeve or shout it out. It's not about a badge of honor. It's about joining in and taking action. And like years from now, when people are talking about this, you could say, I did this. I did this thing. So think about what you're going to do. Black Lives Matter. Kiza, you got something to say?
Yes. Thank you so much, Derek. You're absolutely right. Black Lives Matter, and we need to continue taking action. And just to follow up on what you said, we at Dirty Rectangles also want to say trans rights are human rights. Black trans lives matter. Trans women are women, trans men are men, and non-binary people are valid. We at Dirty Rectangles do not tolerate transphobia, whether that's in an in-person event or one of our virtual online events. This is outlined in our code of conduct, and we stick by it. If you haven't already, please familiarize yourself with the code of conduct. It's on the Dirty Rectangles website. If you do need to report something, if something happens, you can email one of us, or you can file an anonymous report form. Both of those, there's instructions on how to do that on the Dirty Rectangles website. So yeah, we just wanted to follow that up with trans rights and Black Lives Matter. The last point is there are better books about witches and wizards out there.
That's good stuff. Okay, well, I don't know how you transition out of this. So what do you say we get to roll the intro?
Yep.
Take it away, James. That's a different bumper.
I'm allowed to talk now, yeah?
Yep. Everyone. I think everyone can talk. No, no one can talk anymore.
This is a test. This station is conducting a test of the emergency broadcasting system. This is only a test.
Ta-da-da-da-da-da-da. Transitioning into Discord. What's up, everybody?
Everybody.
Hello.
We can talk now.
We can talk
Yes,
now.
we can talk
Yes.
now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. How's everybody doing? What's up,
What's up?
internet?
Set it to full screen, James? Or just
Oh, well, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
in the bottom right of the Discord window?
Does that-
Excuse us while we try and figure out what the fuck we're doing. In traditional Rectangle's fashion, everything was
go.
at the last minute. It's good times. So now James is our AV man, taking over for me this week. Thank you, James.
Thank you very
Much
much.
appreciated.
Means I can't use my fun
So-
little Game Boy camera, but
We'll get there.
some sacrifices had to be made.
James is going to do a great job tonight. Thank you, James. How's everybody doing?
Doing all
This
right.
career.
We're doing pretty good. We got some Balticas. We're having a good time.
Oh, hell yeah. There we go.
All things considered, I've been scrambling trying to get this all set up, so I don't have my beer yet, but I will have it once other people are talking.
Yeah, I figured, last time we did this, we didn't really give a quick hello to anyone that's watching that has no idea what rectangles are. So, with us tonight we have Eric McQuiggan. How you doing, Eric?
I'm doing all right, Derek.
Cool. Eric Lee, how's it going with you?
Good. Pretty good. Pretty good.
Good. Me too. Jonah Davison, what's up?
Hello.
Hi.
I'm here.
You are?
Yeah.
James
Representing.
Edward Smith.
I'm doing well, as you know.
Hell yeah. Kezia, how you doing, Kezia?
I'm doing all right. I mean, given the circumstances of the world, I think I'm holding up okay.
We're all hanging in there.
Yeah, we're all hanging in there, exactly.
Liam, you got your shades on again this month.
We got a bright future. We got a bright future ahead of us. That's all I can say.
Chad is saying we're
Love it.
quiet.
Cool. I don't know if we could crank things up as well a little bit more, James. He's going to tinker with things over on his end while we do stuff. I think we got a few announcements before we get into things. We also have a bit of a show tonight. 7 different teams, I think. 7 different games we're going to be showing off. No main presenters this week, so we're just going to be rolling with what we call our open floor, which is just people that, reached out to us and grabbed like 15 minutes to show off a game. We got a couple of solo devs. We got our first a couple group presenters tonight. I don't know. It's going to be good. How about announcements?
Talks too. A little short
Oh,
one.
yeah, talks too.
Yeah.
Announcements. Who's got the first one? I think it was Eric Billingsley.
Yeah, that's me. Okay, so I wanted to take a moment to talk about the itch.io bundle for racial justice and equality, which launched last week. So it's a bundle. You pay what you want, minimum $5, and 100% of the proceeds from the bundle will be split between the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund and the Community Bail Fund, which that fund is splits. I think it's split between like 70 or more local bail funds and mutual aid funds. So the bundle launched, I think, on Thursday or Friday with 740 something games. And now there's over 1,400. The initial goal, I think, was $100,000 or maybe less, and now it's raised over 4 million so far, and on track to make 5 million, hopefully. There's a lot of really awesome games. Some of them are more well known. I'm just gonna list off a whole bunch of games that are in the bundle. Overland, Night in the Woods, Celeste, Minute, A Short Hike, Tonight We Riot, Quench, Extreme Meat Punks Forever, Starseed Pilgrim, Luminous Corridor. There's the Dirty Rectangles classic Witch Ball.
Oh,
there's
yeah.
also a bunch of assets and game development tools. There's pen and paper RPGs. There's just like so much stuff in it.
I believe there's also a game by one Eric Billingsley.
Yeah, my game that I
Did you
made
skip over your own game?
also in the bundle.
Called the fuck out.
Balls. And
You want to celebrate it.
will be in the bundle. I believe they are still accepting missions. So I will post a link to the bundle and a link to where you can submit your game to the bundle if you'd like to. And please support the cause. Black Lives Matter.
Yeah. I will also say about the bundle is most of the popular stuff I think is sort of generally sorted to the top for visibility, but there's a ton of free stuff near the bottom, and there's a ton of cool stuff interspersed through the middle, and a lot of really, really neat, especially tabletop stuff. Especially Blades in the Dark is an incredibly rad tabletop sourcebook, and it's in there, all of it, so you should check that out.
Hell yeah.
Cool.
Does anybody have this other announcement here?
If nobody
I
has
will take it.
anything else, I have some stuff that's just sort of local to Toronto for people who want to maybe support or get involved in some things that are going on in the city.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Let me
What's up, Toronto?
throw this up here, commandeer the screen with it for a second. So yeah, the Black Legal Action Center, you may have heard of them before. They operate here in Toronto, and they do a lot of community work for people of color in the city and that kind of thing. They are always looking for support and that kind of thing if you are trying to find somewhere for your time or your donation dollars. The other thing I wanted to call attention to is this Walk Against Racism that will be happening actually tomorrow, starting at 11 a.m. Through to 2 p.m. So that is starting at Queen Victoria PS Park, I think. So yeah, just something going on in the near future tomorrow, if you're interested in that.
I also...
Very cool.
Was there someone else who wanted to shout out GDoc Expo, or would you like me?
Go for
Yeah,
it.
go for it.
Yeah, so previously, I believe it's happened a couple times, and moving online this year in September 19th, is the Game Devs of Color Expo, which is, as far as I've heard from everyone who's gone or been anywhere near it, one of the coolest game events going at this moment and growing every single year. Now, they welcome everybody, but they're particularly looking to highlight the experiences and have talks and speakers and panels and things relevant to Game Devs of Color. You can apply to speak. You can apply to show a game. The deadline for that is July 1st, 2020. So that's your deadline. GameDevsOfColorExpo.com. I will paste in the chat. It is an excellent, excellent, excellent thing, and I can't wait to actually see it because I've never been able to get down to NY to take part. So I'm really looking forward to that. So give it a look. Even if you're not going to speak or sponsor it, make sure you're there when it happens so you can watch.
Cool. I think that's it for announcements. We do these shows once a month. If you have an announcement that you would like to sneak in here, by all means, just either toss it right in the chat, which some people are doing, which is very cool, or message us ahead of time, and we could always talk about it here. Whatever's going on in the community, really, we're happy to highlight it.
Yes,
Cool.
and don't forget to tip the bartender. If you know a bartender, please tip them.
Yeah.
Even if they're not working at a bar right now, they could probably use the tip. And shout outs to Alexi, wherever he is, our host, our gallant host at the Avant-Garde Bar in Ottawa. for 10 years running or whatever it is at this point. And
And the good folks at Seascape in Toronto as well.
yes,
Yeah,
and
shout out to
Seascape in
Sarah.
Toronto.
Hell yeah.
I think we should get started then.
Let's do it.
Cool. All right, we'll be right back in just a couple of minutes with the very first presenter of the night. Who will it be? Let's find out.
It will not be on the bumper, but you will find out when they start presenting.
It's fine.
It'll be Emily Flynn Jones.
Okay, yeah.
Spoilers.
All right. Oops. Great. Yeah, it's sorry. That's I don't have things set up for everything. I jumped to something else and I realized I'd set it up for high school stuff. So.
All right, and we are back, ladies and gentlemen, with our very first presenter of the night, Emily Flynn Jones. Emily, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks so much for inviting me, Rectangles, and thanks very much for that important statement up front about the civil rights movement that is happening right now. It's crucial and so important. So I feel like I maybe don't have this games and chill thing quite right, but I am not a chill person, as this kind of title may suggest to you. But today I just kind of want to go through how our company Killjoy Games is making games and why they're making the particular kind of games that they are making, with a few examples. Right, so we are brand newborn. We are babies, just a few months old as a formal entity. But the Killjoy Games aesthetic and kind of ethos is something I've been toying with for years and years. And I want to be really clear about what Killjoy means. It's not the bummer at your party, as if anyone was still having those, right? But it's actually, the feminist killjoy is a term coined by Sarah Ahmed, and it refers to a person who refuses the social and systemic pressures to be like content with their oppression, with their marginalization, and most importantly, that you're supposed to just smile all the way through that and present as happy. So instead, killjoys speak up, they demand for better, and they vocalize like more negative emotions that are supposed to be suppressed. And that should sound pretty familiar to everyone right now. And that's kind of a philosophy that is built into our work. I am Emily Flynn Jones, as I've been introduced, and I'm the founder. I am a lapsed academic, and I do not care a whit about that. Goodbye. But I have been involved in game dev, quote unquote proper, in different capacities for the past 4 years, largely escape rooms, but I don't see us all getting back into closed quarters and touching things together anytime soon, so that's all right though. Some of my projects are solo, but I have really spectacular collaborators that I just like really want to shout out right now, including Amanda Wong, who is like a sterling project/life manager. Reminded me that I probably shouldn't have a meeting with her at 8 o'clock this evening because I was supposed to be here doing this. And then also Tachani Kubandaran, who is just like a brilliant programmer and problem solver and human. So we would not be without you guys. So like what we do, we make games about difficult emotions. That is the Killjoy aspect. We also make games about articulating issues. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of story about where that comes from. A few years ago, I was diagnosed with a psychosocial disability, more commonly known as mental illness. And I wanted to find ways to deal with these issues. And so I recalled something from my childhood, something of an idol called Clarissa Darling. She was the star of Clarissa Explains It All. And this was like a hell of a standout show for me. And the most important part of that program was that the protagonist always made games to solve her problems. Like there's always the central dilemma to any team program, but she would always address it through the language of games. And so that's how I decided to approach games creation. Instead of harnessing games as a means of instead of employing like journaling or more traditional things to explore my feelings, I already had a vocabulary for games from like studying them and playing them for years. And so it just made sense that that was where I was going to do my work. So this is Witch Trilogy, and this started really by accident. We're currently making 3 witch-themed games. And we do have like a maker ethos that I want to talk about a little bit more that binds them together. But most importantly, I think what ties them together is that the issues we're addressing are all like magically mediated in the games. So something we're prototyping right now, thanks to support from Ontario Creates, who have been magnificent, thank you, is called Chris's. And I can't really show you very much right now because we're like 3 weeks in, so it's very rough. But this is a game about words and how they wound. You play as a witch, or a wannabe witch, more aptly, in the mid-1990s. And this game invites you to explore different emotional responses to trauma. Some of them are would traditionally be seen as negative, but none of them are actually wrong. And you also get to play with kind of weighty choices about, like, ethical choices about whether to curse someone or not. But I swear it's kind of funny and it's kind of cute to break some of that tension. And I will be excited to eventually show you some more of that. But we have some other games to talk about. So this is Wax and Wayne. It's an analog game. We are actually very platform agnostic. It's whatever it takes to best tell the story, mechanically and narratively. And this game is about collaboration, community, and care ethics. There are two versions of this game. One is a really nice showpiece for, like, conventions and stuff, where you have this huge cauldron that becomes your board, and I don't have a picture of it right now, I'm sorry. But by stirring the cauldron, you change the board configuration, as well as the possible fates and the way that you play the game. Then there's this version, which is a card version and actually, like, reproducible, because cauldrons are apparently not cheap. And in this, you play with the deck and you configure it into a constellation. I didn't realize I wasn't going to have video, and I have, like, a nice box here to show you, so just pretend you looked at it and it was great. But yeah, in this version, the constellation changes constantly. And from a Killjoy perspective, and an emotionally, like, difficult situation perspective, I made this game to think through emotional challenges of belonging to a community, and how so often we have to balance, like, self-care, care for other individuals, as well as care for the community as a whole. And, like, so often these can be really conflicting needs and just really deeply difficult to prioritize. So in this game, you play as a coven, up to 4 players, and you're working up towards your monthly moon ritual. You're trying to share resources amongst one another that will allow you to cast that final spell during the ritual. And the way that this works is designed to be very non-judgmental about the choices you make. I mean, sometimes it'll be beneficial to practice that self-care and give the resources to yourself, whereas other times it might be beneficial to give it to others. But the outcomes will still be very varied. I also, in this game, really wanted to make visible all of this invisible and emotional labor that we do for one another as communities. And so how the pieces work, particularly these gems, which I wish I close-upped on, the way they work in the game is like a literalization of that work. So you can actually look at it, and you're invited to, as part of the game, reflect upon and celebrate this as part of play. I think there's a video here. Okay, so this is the third game in the Witch trilogy we're working on. And this is called Tea with Stars and Scars. It's a mini game, and I mean a super mini game. It's like 5 minutes long max. And it's a game that is about being critical of disability representations. I am also someone who suffers with an autoimmune disease, and that is a chronic disorder. And this kind of game I like to think of as in a subgenre of personal games called autopathography. And I think it's really important to have language around these kind of things. And autopathography is indeed autobiographical. We know that, we're familiar. But it's more like something like Audre Lorde's Cancer Diaries, which really foregrounds an experience with illness. And so, like, I never used to talk at all about my experience with disability and illness, or my illnesses, because I was really tricked into thinking that it was self-indulgent somehow. But actually what that was some really internalized ableist nonsense, because drawing attention to my own difference made other people uncomfortable. And then that would further, like, remind me that it was tacitly unacceptable and not enough to be the way that I was. And I think that we find this kind of ableist positioning so often in our narratives of disability. And I just want to break down a little bit more some of the design challenges and choices that I've made with this game that is still very much a work in progress. So like, it doesn't matter what medium you're watching or you're consuming. Very often, like disabled characters, their trajectory is always the same. It's moving towards a cure. And it's moving towards normalizing these like aberrant bodies that don't fit in. They don't fit into society. They burden society, and they're not productive, right? And so this kind of narrative just really reinforces to the disabled that it's unacceptable, it's bad, and it's even like useless. And this very often also happens in magical tales because pointing to she who shall not be named, right? Like magic is just it's a magic cure provider. A magical system can just like totally and explicitly be designed to easily wave away any kind of difference. And only by being cured, these characters can then go on to see their full potential. So, I mean, like, it may seem weird that, like, why am I complaining about or being critical of the idea of a cure? Like, surely that is what people with disabilities want, right? Sure, that's what anyone with any affliction would want. But, like, not necessarily, because we want validity based on ourselves as we are. And what these narratives do is erase us. So that's kind of the impetus for making Tea with Stars and Scars, and I wish I'd given it another name because that's actually kind of hard to say. So that took me back to the first ever instance I could remember of this magical cure narrative, and that is from a series of Welsh folk tales called the Mabinogion. And this dates back to the 12th century. You might be more familiar with some related stuff as Arthurian legend. But one of the stories really stuck out to me, and it's about a witch named Ceridwen. And she has this beautiful daughter who's visibly disabled and likely, but she has a son, who is visibly disabled and likely neuroatypical. And so, wanting the best for him, as we always do in these stories, she concocts a spell that can cure him. And so this involves the creation of a potion that has to be stirred constantly for a year, and she hires a man to do this. He, of course, messes this up, and fearing retribution, runs the heck away, and she pursues him with terrible vengeance in mind. But then she ultimately has like reflection and a conversation with herself and decides that this is not the way. So we're back here again to Tea with Stars and Scars. Like, I'm adapting this core narrative and attempting to subvert and kind of challenge the ableism that underpins it, as well as so many other narratives like it. And I'm just going to give you a bit of a glimpse as to like some of the choices that were made. So we begin with some exposition. There's Ceridwen, or in this case, Ceri, which is more like a modern version of that. She visits with you, and you play as the narrator. And at the moment, it's with an unspecified disability. And actually, on reflection, that is not fair or right. If you are not representing something, if you're not being explicit, then you're not representing anything or anyone. It's not just a position that someone can happily fit into, like an everyman. So I'm going to change that and be more explicit about it. But sorry, yeah, at the beginning, she's offered you this magical cure from the original story, and you're going to start spending your year tending to the potion. So from there, it's like a year is quite a long time. It's enough time for you to begin to start thinking about the deal that you've made with the witch. And during this time spent like stirring your elixir, you're going to wonder what a non-disabled life means for you and what your disability means. And start to be a bit more critical about what the idea of cure means. And I am definitely steering the player in that direction during this. So this portion of the game is the most mechanical, but it will eventually, it doesn't do it in this, represent something called crip time. And this refers to the way that people with disabilities experience time. So it may be, for example, that a disability makes a task take longer for you, for example. It's a temporality that's very different from normative bodies. So when I can get this working properly, the text, as well as the passage of time, which is signified by the stars, will move at the same rhythm in which you stir. And sometimes that'll be slowly, sometimes that'll be quickly, and sometimes even possibly backward. So after this portion of the game, Kara returns to you, and she's fully expecting you to take the potion. She wants you to take it. But she, as in the original text, she is actually an empathetic and persuadable character. So you start a conversation with her, and we then go into branching dialogue, in which we look at like a lot of ideas about refusing the idea of the cure. And instead, it takes on a kind of healing component. And I think healing is really crucially distinct from curing. It doesn't erase the disability for the comfort of other people, but instead in this game, it's looking at an internalized process of healing, which begins with adjusting your own relationship to your disability and understanding that within the context of a broader world that just isn't built for you. And then also finding kind of acceptance or love for your own difference. So those are some of the beginning challenges I have. The latest challenge, which I should be considering, oh my God, sorry, is that actually disability and the access to care of any kind or diagnosis is very, very heavily weighted against people of color. And so this is a game that is built from a hugely white perspective, and I want to more deeply consider how that should look. I've been raised in the UK, and in Canada, healthcare is widely and freely available to me. So that is something that I now want to take on and consider in building this game, so that it can speak better to a myriad of people. But so I hope I killed a little bit of joy for you. That's just an example of some of the games that we are making and how and why we make them with a particular ethos of killing joy. You can @ me or check out our website for kind of further information about like the status of our games. Thank you for showing up, and Black Lives frickin' matter. Thank you.
Yay! Thank you, Emily.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Oh yeah, let's get some claps in the chat.
Thank you.
We need an official emoji that represents claps. Oh, we're getting some Doritos in the chat. Maybe Doritos will be it. That was really heavy. We're sort of waiting in here to see if anyone in the chat has any questions. How about from the Rectangles crew here?
That looks beautiful. I don't have a particular question.
Many questions, but I do think like disability really needs to be talked about more in games, and like I'm all for games that explore that a lot more, especially like by disabled people. 100%.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah. And I think kind of unfortunately one of the most powerful ways we can do that right now is through narrative. And I don't want to diminish narrative-based games, but when we put them into our mechanics, it's like, okay, so we're just gonna hobble someone. That's not what disability is, right? It's so much more complex than that. So I like the idea of just literally having a conversation and proposing arguments. And yeah, I think we need to be literal sometimes and not metaphorical when it comes to the representation of this stuff.
Yeah. It's really easy to use. Sometimes metaphor is a great way to communicate things like that. Like I've thought about that for invisible illnesses as someone else who deals with that myself. But it's really easy for people to miss the mark on that and just misunderstand or just have that magical thinking. yeah, sorry. I just trail off at the end there, but
Hexanol Noir in the chat was saying that they are currently working on an IF game that involves neurodivergence, and so it was lovely to see that there's other folks that are also working on games that involved uncomfortable subject matter like that.
Oh, great. I can't wait to see it, and I hope you will share it with the community.
Yeah.
Because honestly, it has to come from these perspectives. We do have a storied past of representing like neurodivergence that is not necessarily kind or correct. So yeah.
Yep.
And I think
Cool.
personal stories, just the profundity of it, I think is important. So thank you for doing that, because it's really hard work. It really is hard work.
Cool. Well, thank you, Emily. This was a really great presentation.
All right, no worries. I killed some joy. Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a quick little couple-minute break here. We'll set up the next person, and we will be right back.
Okay, am I off now?
We are no longer streaming, I think, yes.
Okay, great. Is there anything I need to do to make sure I don't stay on screen? Stop sharing.
Our voices are probably still going through, maybe. That's okay. That's okay. A little behind-the-scene treat for everyone out there. Yeah, and if you just stop sharing your screen. All right. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen, with our next presenter of the night, Mr. Norman Chalk. What's going on, Norman?
How do you do?
I'm very excited for this. What do you got for us tonight?
All right. I suppose I should preface this by saying that we're very much going from the sublime to the ridiculous in two senses. Number one, obviously, that was a very thoughtful and sort of weighty presentation. This has the weight of a feather or a piece of toilet paper, as will be revealed in a moment. But I also wanted to say I tremendously enjoy these intermediate, or the little animations in between. So I did say that in the green room, I'll call it. But where I suppose the audience as a whole should hear it. So there's two ways of thinking of this. Either one, this is my effort to try and get you guys begging me to give presentations on data again, rather than trespassing on your game territory. Or alternatively, this is sort of the first game that I have helped bring into the world. It's a very simple one. And what I'd like to do is actually talk a bit about where it came from before going into the details. The lovely Eric Billingsley is kind of steering everything here, but we'll get into the game shortly. Although if you want to jump in and start playing whenever you want, Eric, that's totally fine, because it should be fairly self.
I don't need those instructions. It's fine.
One thing I kind of wanted to talk about was sort of the spirit of events like Dirty Rectangles, and kind of what it has meant for me. Eric had posted an account called Octocurio, which sort of looks at interesting games and tweets them out. And I picked up on a game called Hive Time, and I actually streamed it on my own channel. And through meeting that particular developer, we got to talking, and we decided to collaborate on this supply chain game. So the developer, sort of the one who originated the idea and sort of invited me to come along, is a gentleman by the name of Valiant Cheese, also known as Josh Bush, is his real name. He is a real game developer, whereas I am a mere tourist. But I did kind of want to just speak to the idea of sort of building up communities and being able to give people a hand. I wouldn't have had an opportunity to bring this along if that connection hadn't been made. So I hope that you never know where your next connection is going to come from. You don't know where your next collaboration is going to come from. And this is, one of the first times that I've actually been able to go from the start of a project to the finished and have something deliverable. So what is this thing? Valiant Cheese wanted to do something that explored the idea of why there isn't any toilet paper in the storefronts. He sort of did some napkin math about trying to figure out how much toilet paper was being made, how much a reasonable consumption rate would be, and then sort of guess where the shortage was coming from. And it sort of started off as this very this is going to be unkind to him, but it's a very sort of propaganda kind of idea, where it isn't because of panic buying that the shortages are coming as a result. It's because of just-in-time supply chains. I think the concept has sort of been simplified a little bit more down to this idea of looking at sort of the fragility of supply chains. And this is relevant to more than just toilet paper. I should apologize, Eric, the first period's graphs are not going to be very interesting, but those will get a little more populated as time goes by. But the idea here would be that, to my view, I mean, I am an actual real-life economist, so if you wanted me to sit down and paper out what I think the best supply chain would be, either in something like this or in general, it would basically be, one item that teleports from the manufacturer to the consumer at, instantaneously, and everything else is irrelevant. But we don't live in that world. And I think one thing that we've been learning over the course of the pandemic is how fragile some of these supply chains are, and how much trouble you can get in if you don't sort of build in some resiliency. And so I saw a couple of questions inside of chat about, is this a clicker game? It is a very simplified game. It's not so much a clicker game However, you do control some production rates and resupply thresholds.
It's a
So
slider
essentially,
game.
yeah, slider game. There you go. Essentially, you can sort of think of yourself, for those of you who had to take an econ class, you can think of yourself as the social planner. You're the benevolent or maybe less than benevolent dictator who decides what everyone's consumption rates are going to be. Or you can, if you want, you can also sort of think of it as a sandbox. Inside the settings, there are ways to turn off the events. You can even do things like sort of, if you turn on the debugging options, if you want, you can add your own events and whatnot. But the idea here is basically to sort of explore, it's a little bit of a simulation to see what happens to supply chains within certain events. You'll notice on the left-hand side, there's a bunch of little torn sheets of toilet paper. This is because Eric has abandoned all hope of profitability and is just letting waste generate in the manufacturer. That's a completely legitimate choice inside of this game, and it's a guaranteed way that the manufacturer will never run out of toilet paper. But this is essentially it. Some of the nice things about it would be being able to sort of see the progress over time. The reports are sort of intended to allow you to choose your own goals. So for me, maybe I would say I want zero waste. But on top of zero waste, I never want a situation in which home has failed to consume toilet paper, because I don't know about you, but my home is only filled with the highest and greatest texts of philosophy, which certainly do not make for suitable bathroom tissue. But essentially, it's very open-ended, and that will also include the what you can do with the game afterwards. The source is available on GitLab, and as I said, I think if you have the debugging options are if you push E, you'll actually be able to add your own events. There's a small editor inside of it, although it's all just inside a JSON file. So if you like being a super hardcore hacker and just deal with that one monstrous line the editor produces, more power to you. Sorry? Yes, although if you haven't gone into setting, I think if you have to hit escape and go into settings, there's a debug mode. Debug mode needs to be enabled to be able to, or debug shortcuts, my apologies.
Crafty. No one will ever find that.
Yeah. But yeah, if you select event, you can either make a new event. This is kind of built sort of with Valiant Cheese and myself in mind, so this may not necessarily be the most intuitive tool in the world. But it did allow us to put the modding support in the tag on itch.io. There's actually one other thing I was going to say about my collaborator, but I'll save that for the end. But sorry, Eric, it sounded like you had a question.
How do I leave this?
Oh, just click anywhere outside of the event editor, I think.
And do you want to explain sort of what the different sliders do?
Sure. So, I mean, and the ways to sort of think about them would probably be to divide between the manufacturer and the home. These are consumers and producers. So on the manufacturer, your slider is adjusting to production rate, and that's going to be the rate at which toilet paper is created. If you put that down to, you can never have 0%, but you can have 1%, and it will very, very slowly generate toilet paper. If you go to 200%, you're generating toilet paper at the fastest possible rate. Home, you don't adjust the consumption rate, but what you're doing is you're adjusting sort of the threshold at which you start resupplying. So in this case, I think at 85%, you're going to say, okay, I'm less than 85%, time to go and do a toilet paper trip. And so what you'll probably notice is that all of the supply points that you've put a high resupply threshold at, you're going to be generating a lot of vehicles to go and get the stock more quickly. But of course, the challenge with the warehouse right now is that the manufacturer hasn't been producing a whole lot. And so even though it wants to send out trucks, there's not a whole lot to get. There should be some more interesting variation in your report now. So the first report comes after 2 minutes. You'll notice there's a little shake in the home section. That's just a little visual indicator that somebody wanted to consume toilet paper but couldn't.
Okay.
I should also say some technical details too. So this was made in Godot. This was kind of interesting. I was originally warmed to Godot because apparently GDScript is supposed to be inspired by Python, which I know reasonably well. I was a little less enamored with it by the end. I didn't find it too unpleasant to work with, but I think the promise of Python-like, I've noticed in a lot of the GitHub issues, they're making some pretty clear decisions to avoid certain Python syntax, which I find the most helpful. So in this case, for me, it's a little bit like Unity in terms of trying to pick up a new language. And so I think I do have a future project I've got in mind, which I'll be trying in Unity this time around. But I still have Godot installed, and I'll still be messing around with that. If you guys are looking at the screen right now, you'll notice that sort of the consequences of the lower production rate are sort of being felt right now. I will definitely tell you, the middle is not necessarily the best default option in this game. I was definitely responsible for a lot of balance on this, and I can talk about that a little bit later, but I've probably... Oh yeah, so Colby Cave says we're politely avoiding poop jokes. I do have a writing credit on this, and there is a certain elegance in not like immediately putting it right out. I did not write this one, by the way. But I'm responsible for a couple of newspaper titles. I think if you see a silly event inside of the game, it's probably one that I wrote. Sorry. Oh yeah, I was talking about Godot. It was definitely really good though to kind of collaborate with someone to try and bring a little bit of my own background in terms of the idea of exploring the idea of supply chains. Into the world. There's a couple of things about where the player's attention might have been with certain sliders and this search process, which I thought was sort of interesting. That definitely my background kind of helped out in that, I think. And I can definitely say the biggest milestone for this one, though, would be it's the first time that a project was started and actually finished, and so I owe Valiant Cheese quite a bit for that. I think that was it. Beyond, I did have a couple of. Oh, this is one of the ones that I wrote. So, although I think I wrote energy drink trials, and I think I was superseded in terms of the title. I have a few minutes left, so what I'll maybe do, I'll get the one last thing out of the way that I wanted to say. I am probably one of the people who stands to listen more than talk in terms of the civil rights struggle going on, and obviously has been going on much longer than it's been in the headlines. But there's a couple things that I'd like to encourage you guys for. Valiant Cheese does do this game design for a living, and actually 2 projects he's worked on are in that bundle. So Hive Time is the one where we found each other and we wound up collaborating. But he also worked on a game called The Away Team. Now, The Away Team is $8 US, and Hive Time is a pay-what-you-want game for $10. So for those of you who have not already bought the itch.io bundle for racial justice and equality, I don't know if it has a pay more option, but I will let you know that one of the games that you have inside of it has a price tag of $10, and I would strongly encourage you guys to consider, if you can, boosting that amount. Obviously, there's a weighting effect that comes from seeing that first value that's inside of that, but it is definitely a cause that is worthy of more, and I can tell you for sure that one of the things you'll be playing inside of that is definitely worth much more than the price that they put on there. So that was my effort to try and not completely bypass the moment that we're in, but also to sort of acknowledge the fact that I don't quite have the same standing on these conversations. And yes, gifting is a good idea too. Were there any questions?
I had a couple thoughts as I was sort of like watching this, and I love that sort of progression that you have in the actual main game screen right here, where we see like manufacturer down to the warehouse to the store to the home. It's really cool to see that like trickling down and stuff. And where my mind goes, because I'm all about feature creep, is like, isn't toilet paper like recyclable now? Like, is there a way that we can turn this into a loop? You know what I mean? Like the toilet paper gets used at the home, and we said we weren't going to make poop jokes, but it does its thing and it vacates your house through the tubes and winds up back at the manufacturing somewhere, right? Like it'd be kind of cool to have to see it all coming like full circle.
What's interesting too, like, so one of the things that I found really interesting about this one was trying to model, because like you and I are pretty much on the same page in terms of feature creep. Like for me, the idea of every single one of these supply points, I feel like it has its own story that it can tell here. So for instance, the idea of panic buying, or the idea of maybe a financial incentive not to be creating waste toilet paper. To a certain extent, the player can decide how much they want to care about that. But you'll notice that there's little triangles that are moving along the sliders here, and those sort of represent certain thresholds. So you'll notice that if you can't consume toilet paper for a while, your resupply minimum threshold keeps going up and up, because the pain of not having been able to consume is pretty terrible. And so you're
not being able to consume.
Sorry.
I was just repeating that. The pain of not being able to consume is a very interesting statement.
But to the point that you're bringing in here, so there's lots of different ways that you can model and sort of say what's going on. And so in the event editor, events can actually adjust different factors. So one thing you could actually do is you could say improvements in toilet paper recycling, and what could happen there would be that it gives a bonus to, so if you do add property, you could do the production rate. So you could basically improve the rate of production. So this is the recycling that's coming in. And if you wanted, you could also say, like, maybe the improvement is also something it's more absorbent, or however you want to put it, or it's 8-ply. We're going to make it like Gillette razors. And so that's actually a terrible analogy for toilet paper, but in this case, you could also mess around with the consumption rate. So in this case, the consumption rate would go down because the toilet paper is more effective at doing what it does. So what's kind of neat about this one is the number of events. When you first think about it as just a single object to sort of move from point A to point B, it's a very simple exercise, but it turns out, like, when you're designing events and when you have all these parameters to mess around with, like minimum consumption rates, or minimum resupply rates and whatnot, this can actually stand in for a lot of real life behavior. So but yeah, as you say, like, the idea has room for expansion in two ways: either using the existing systems to sort of model other behaviors that you see in the real world, but also the idea of supply chains are really complex. This is kind of what lends themselves towards interesting games. Not to claim that this one is very interesting. But actually, Scars Slayer. Sorry, I'm only partially looking at chat, but I can address the over and under issue. But yeah, like there's two directions that you can go in terms of expanding this idea, which is number one, to add a lot of complexity. And I like that idea because then, the player sort of realizes, holy crap, supply chains are like really hard, and you really need to manage everything. Even with 4 sliders, it's actually hard to get this thing into an equilibrium. But on the other hand, what you can also do is you can mess around with this fairly simple set of instructions, and you can embody some of these changes that you see in the real world through events, either temporary or more permanent ones. To the question of over and under, I actually tried writing in an event that it said that the definitive and canonical over method was more efficient, and it would slow down the consumption rate. But I had a limit on the number of events that I could add, so that was one of the first ones that got cut.
Wow, you thought of everything.
We got to get to some other presenters, but I have one last question for you.
Yes.
Have you ever read a newspaper after it span at your face?
I'm sorry. Have you ever read a newspaper after it span at my face? In this game, yes, but I've never had a newspaper spin at my face. So my neighbors actually used to keep stealing my newspapers, which is why I stopped subscribing to them.
Well, time for another game, I guess.
Yes, sorry, I think I filibustered a little bit, but if there are any questions that people wanted answered, you can feel free to contact me privately. On Twitter, I'm at SystemChalk, or on Twitch, I'm at SystemChalk, and I'll be hanging out in chat too.
It was fun. It was great. A very eloquent game from a very eloquent speaker, I would say.
That is very kind of you to say.
Well, thanks so much, Norman.
Thanks.
All right, we'll
Thank you,
in
Norman.
just
Thank you.
a couple of minutes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back with the one and only Mr. Jonah Davidson.
Hello, everybody. I thought I would do a nice demo of some card games that I've been working on, tabletop games that I can't play test with anyone. And I started thinking about them, and I started thinking about some of the lessons I've learned while working on these games. And I kept noticing a bit of a theme. So instead, in my way that I do, if you've been to previous Rectangles, I created a PowerPoint at blinding speed, and I'm here to talk to you today about something that I've realized I should have put together a little while ago. And I'm hoping I don't fuck this up, but let's see how it goes. I promise I've thought this through. But, so I have some thoughts for you. I'm just going to make double sure I'm looking at the right things. All right, perfect. Yeah, it's my soapbox time. You can see me alt tabbing. Is this going to break? It's not going to break. Okay. So here's the topic of my talk. I'm calling it Decolonizing Your Games from the Jump. If I talk too fast, find some way to warn me because I can't see the chat anymore. Or how to be less of a fuck up before it's too late. Okay, so this is just a recurring thing that's been coming up in a lot of the game designs that I've been working on lately. And the thing about my digital game designs is they're big and they're complicated and they take a long time to make, so I don't learn these lessons for a while until I've invested a lot of time and thought into them. And there are lessons you should be learning earlier, maybe before you put a lot of money into a game, or perhaps a media push, or you can't change anything because it's too late and it's already gone gold, and you've realized that you kind of fucked something up, and you made your game just shitty in one of various ways. You upheld colonialism, you upheld terrible ideas about the world. So, I've got a lot to unlearn, and so do you. Making your games or media or work less shitty or less dismissive of the complexity of the world is going to be a constant effort against your biases, prejudices, against easy answers to complex problems. But you're going to do it because you're not an asshole. This presentation is just a few examples, a few ideas I hit upon on how to reframe and rethink specific projects I've been working on to serve as examples to get you thinking about your own projects. This is not exhaustive, obviously, or perfect, and I don't claim to be an expert on this stuff. This is specifically aimed at other folks who are trying to get started in not dropping this ball so hard it goes through the earth and out the other side, and doing it sooner rather than later, because the longer you work on a project, the bigger this project gets, the more money and time you invest in a project, and the more attention it gets. If you have to change things later, if you make mistakes that more and more people see, that you feel bad about later, even if you fix things, you're still going to have to carry that weight. Oh, and also, if you really want to make sure your game doesn't put across terrible ideas about race or gender or colonialism or other things, hire diversity and sensitivity consultants. They are out there. Actually pay them. I'll address that again at the end. So here are my examples. 1, Gold Dust. This was a game I made for the Global Game Jam, and the theme was repair. So repair, everyone and their dog, including me and my dog, York, leapt to the concept of kintsugi or kintsukuroi, which is a form of pottery repair using liquid metal inspired by Buddhist and Shinto teaching. It's the one where you repair cracked pottery with gold or liquid silver, and it hardens and it looks beautiful, and you think about impermanence. And kintsugi is cool and all, but the exoticization of historical Japanese culture that I saw out of like thousands of jammers across the world was really immediate and a little weird. It's cool to be inspired by Japanese culture, and a lot of people in Japan might appreciate it, having their culture highlighted, but that's not up to you. And also, I don't think anyone can avoid their inspirations coming out in their work, but they can think about how those inspirations do come out in the work, rather than them just coming out without you thinking about them. So in my case, my conclusion for this, partway through the jam, was to realize that instead of making a game about being a mythologized, masterful, national treasure of a potter who made amazing things out of gold, I made a game about being a fuck-up apprentice to a good potter. Not only did this give me ideas for even better mechanics, it also meant that the game could teach people about pottery and involve them in the concept of kintsugi without caricaturing as something distant and mystical and feeding into bullshit magical foreigner tropes. Skyliners. I got an idea for a tabletop mechanic set that super fits the idea of cool street racing with cool cars, a la Fast and the Furious and all that. I started making the game, looked at references from other media and things, doodled up a couple of character concepts, and then I went, oh, right. It's really easy to accidentally default to things, even if you're a sensible, kind person who's trying to think this stuff out and trying to be sensible about it. But remember, Dark Souls says, gender has no bearing on ability. So in the final version of this game, Skyliners, which was originally called Drift Queens, the larger majority of characters will not be male, because plenty of stuff that looks like that has majority male characters already exists. So I'm not doing this for the cred or the virtue or whatever, or to perform. I'm doing it because it's an extremely easy fix that I can start now to be way more inclusive later. I'm also just not going to mention it. I'm not going to call it Drift Queens instead. Because this is literally the bare minimum that I can do. I don't really deserve kudos for this. I should have probably realized it sooner. But by doing this, it can have a much wider impact. More people can see themselves in games like this as cool street racers, which is a very dangerous thing, and you shouldn't do it unless you're Vin Diesel. Next game, Work Mages. This is one I've been working on for a while. I've showed a few demos at previous Rectangles back when those happened. It's a competitive game. And competitive games tend to rely on violence because it's a really obvious metaphor where someone wins and someone loses, which kind of sucks. It's a little limited in some ways, but I get it. I don't think violence in games necessarily, especially cartoonish violence, inspires real violence, but it does play a part in abstracting it and mythologizing it in the same way that games like Civilization mythologize and abstract colonization and other things like that. There's always the barbarians. Also, games can be about the same thing over and over, or they could be about new things. So why not do the new things? So instead of making the game about powerful mages doing battle, which was just the original concept, slinging spells around, which is kind of whatever, instead I imagined a game about mages who aren't very good at being mages. Maybe they're young, their powers aren't great, and the best kind of magical combat they can muster is a schoolyard dust-up. This isn't a game about heroes. This is a game about ordinary people who can happen to do magic. And what I discovered was this immediately recontextualized the entire game in a whole bunch of fun ways. The idea of the characters being, the conclusion I kind of settled on was teenage mages with shitty part-time jobs that they have to perform with magic, like lifting boxes using wind magic for the magical Amazon warehouse. So instead of fighting kill each other or whatever, instead of doing elaborate forms of violence for some higher purpose or whatever bullshit, they're just fighting with their friends who have different kinds of magic to blow off steam. Kind of like Splatoon or Kid Icarus Uprising, they pick each other up and dust each other off after their fights. Changing this kind of design even had mechanical implementations that were implications that were kind of fun, like framing super attacks instead of like a world-ending ability that you have because you're a superhero, but instead being a Herculean effort to summon up like a big fireball or whatever. That's barely worth the effort after your day working a forge and swinging hammers. And also, I'm having a lot more fun writing dialogue and story mode concepts for this because it's about people instead of about cartoon characters. It's much wittier and more relatable than magic heroes shoot at each other. So look forward to mages with shit jobs at some point. Here's a fun one. It's got no name right now. Why? Well, I was going to call it Megiddo. It's a name inspired by some books I read as a child, and by, you may know that name from a spell in the Persona, the Shin Megami Tensei games. There's a reason for that. It's an alternate version of the word Geddon or Armageddon. Did you know that there's a holy site for multiple religions called Tel Megiddo? Because I didn't, but I'm glad I Googled it now before I called my fucking game Megiddo. I was momentarily annoyed that I lost what I thought was such a good, evocative name, but then I remembered I could just make up a nonsense name or just slam the words angel and demon in somewhere and just not be shitty. There's no conclusion to this one. I just needed to be not an asshole here, and I've decided not to be and not make light of people's religion, because why would I? This one's a little more complex. This is Get Back. This is a card game I've been working on for a while. I had some mechanics and a concept to make a game about Carmen Sandiego-esque super thieves. You know, stealing landmarks, stealing the Statue of Liberty, stealing the Eiffel Tower, whatever. But the minute I started brainstorming landmarks you could steal, I realized the problem. Like 90% of global landmarks would be fuck awful to steal, because it'd be stealing them mostly from cultures that have already been kicked around by colonization and had shit stolen from them. Also, tons of cultural artifacts have already been stolen by colonizing forces and now sit in museums or something. They stole a fucking wall from an ancient Buddhist temple in Vietnam. It's on display in the British Museum, I think. Someone just left a wall lying around. I wonder why they leave that around. Might as well take it. There's a good GDC talk about flipping the script, which is more game design focused, but it's worth mentioning here, about how World of Warcraft devs, in a desperate attempt to prevent players from playing too much, introduced halved XP after a certain number of hours of play, which the community hated, so that they then reintroduced that as bonus XP for the first X hours of play per day. Exact same result, exact same numbers, different framing. People loved it. So I flipped the script for Get Back, and it immediately introduced a ton of new ideas, mechanics, and possibilities that were previously hidden from me because I was leaning on a trope. I was leaning on the idea of Carmen Sandiego, this romanticized thief who steals whatever she wants without thinking about it. And tropes have baggage. So Get Back, or whatever I end up calling it, is now a game about being the same kind of master thieves, but each player is from one of those post-colonial countries and is stealing artifacts from Western museums and returning them to their original homes. The concept's basically the same, but that sounds like a hell of a lot more fun. And instead of chasing money or some terrible, like, obnoxious prestige, you want justice, and maybe also to get the most heat as the classy master thief that you imagine yourself to be. So that means that hidden role mechanics are instantly justified in the text because you don't want people to know which country you're from. Player interaction being non-conflict based and mostly be about messing with each other makes a lot more sense when you're actually all pursuing a good goal, but in different ways, a la kind of Eurogame type board games that are very conflict averse. And also victory points are suddenly not just a nonsense number where you go, I got 50 paintings, so I win. I'd just be much happier to play a game where I'm stealing from rich assholes, so I'm going to make one. So this was a mess of different ideas, and it's all over the place. But I have a few final notes for you. These are just the ways that I thought about a few different things. But you're going to make mistakes in your designs, and you're going to make things that discount people or discount their complexity or the complexity of cultures or other things like that. And you can say, I'm going to learn from those mistakes, but you also have to be aware of who suffers the consequences of your mistakes. The people you work with, the people who care about your projects, and the people who want to see themselves in game. You can make games for them. You can make games for everyone. You don't have to make games that exclude people. But you could passively do that without being aware of it. Almost all of the conclusions that I came to for all of these game concepts were just me realizing I should either tell my own stories, like having shit jobs, or in uplifting other people's stories without co-opting them. And in the case of doing that, I'm still going to do my utmost to get them right, or I'm going to get the hell out of the way and let other people tell them. Now, ideally, like I said, you should hire a diversity consultant if you do plan to do just about anything that involves or evokes the real world, other cultures, which is everything you're ever going to make. And I hope you will include other cultures, and you will include queer people and trans people and people from around the world, people of color, in your games, and get them right. Pay consultants well for the work, and never ever ask people of color, queer people, whoever, to teach you for free. They don't fucking owe you anything. Early in your project, before you even know it's going to be a thing, before you start spending money on it, you can already start examining your thinking and your assumptions, and you may find more creative and interesting ways to frame things in your game that don't exclude people. Sometimes tropes and archetypes lock you out of lateral thinking because they provide easy answers. But easy answers are simple, they're familiar, and they're often really boring. I could tell you where to go look for this, but just there's endless resources out there. Don't ask your marginalized friends for them unless they're offering. Google exists. Go digging. Some quick acknowledgements because I'm out of time. Thanks to everyone who took the time to teach me, a dipshit, these lessons. Thanks to everyone out there still fighting for basic recognition, let alone the ability to make doofy mistakes in silly games and then rethink those mistakes and get away with it. Black Lives Matter, Trans Lives Matter. You should deconstruct any system that would claim otherwise and fuck it all. And just tell your own stories. They might be more interesting. You may be able to relate more closely to people who are different from you if you're willing to tell your stories and they're willing to tell their stories, and you can see each other in your stories without stepping on each other. This was a bit of a mess, but that's usual for my PowerPoint, so this is me. I'm the Hangman. Thank you for listening to me rant.
Thank you, Jonah.
I don't know how we
Yes,
follow
thank
that up
you,
with
Jonah.
questions.
Do we have any
That
questions?
was really good. That was really good. If anyone has any questions in the chat, you got a hot second to toss them in there.
Ooh, hold on.
That was really interesting. Like, so, what?
It was probably way too fast, but I realized.
No. But you covered a lot of ground there.
It was
What
all
I really
digestible.
Your acknowledgement that let me turn my cam on here. Your acknowledgement that some of the things that you've already developed might be not as okay as you want them to be, right? And then pivoting on that really quickly. And I feel like a lot of game developers either don't do that research or they do that research and they're like, oh, I don't want to change this, right?
Yeah. It's complicated.
But
it's like, I don't want to say rethink these things early because then you'll save money. I mean, that is an incentive, but also an incentive is just like not fucking up. And also, every single one of these ideas that I came up with were so much cooler and more fun and more varied and had room for more people and more ideas than the tropes that I found myself falling into. Yes, and there's a good mention in the chat is if you don't have it as a substitute for a diversity expert is diversify your interests. Learn about other things, read about other cultures, read books written by and about people who don't look like you. Mix it up.
If you're a game developer, do things other than playing video games.
Yes,
I
please.
highly recommend it. You'll actually become a better creative that way if you just expose yourself to more of the world than just your favorite video games.
Yeah, it's good to get intersectional in more ways than one. I was thinking of your talk. Really reminded me of the Sid Meier game that's literally called Colonization. And so, as you can imagine, it's almost sort of impossible for that game to not be very problematic. And I feel like I'm trying to think of when it was actually released, the original one, probably sometime in the 90s.
93.
Yeah, and so they were really trying, they clearly made an effort to try to be sensitive to some things in it. They're very careful with I don't want to say they're very careful. They're careful for the early 90s in terms of their depiction of a lot of the sort of indigenous people. But one choice that they made that's very interesting is that there are no African slaves in the game. It is a game about the colonization of North America, essentially, and there are no African slaves in the game. They just they chose to basically just not address it, you know what I mean? To not bring it up because they thought it would be a sore point. And, it's hard to think of, at that time in, 93, what they could have done differently, just the people that were working on the game. I mean, it's very clearly a game that was made by, a bunch of Gen X or older white men. And so, it's tricky to think of what they really could have done that would have been better at that time. But it's definitely always the game that I think of when I think of this stuff, just because it's very instructive as sort of like a Johnny Don't sort of example.
It can never be perfect, but it can always be better.
Yeah.
Is the thing I try to.
Yeah, that's a
We should
kind of
kick.
in a lot of Civilization games is they keep moving it, but they keep missing the kind of like inherent problem of how they frame the history of world events.
Yeah, Civilization in general is, as a series, is sort of has a lot of problems, which I mean, they're easy to run into when you're dealing with real life history as kind of your backdrop for your game, right? But yeah, it's definitely something to be. It's an interesting thing to discuss, especially in these sort of times. But you know.
Well, I think with that, we should take a little break and come back with another video game.
We'll have
What do you say?
Zed and Santiago next. But first,
All right.
one of our lovable bumpers that everybody loves.
Hell yeah! Which one's it gonna be? Who knows?
All right, everybody. Tonight we have a couple of fine presenters showing off their super cool multiplayer VR game. It's an asynchronous VR game, which I'm sure they'll tell you all about. This is Zed and Santiago. Say hello, gentlemen.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, everyone. Zed, go ahead.
Okay, so a lot of great presentations before us. I just want to acknowledge good job that everyone did before us and probably will do after us. And hopefully ours is okay. We just spent like 8 months last year and the first half of this year before the virus stuff took over, creating Flicker. I think you can see everything on the screen, hopefully. It's an asymmetric VR game, as Eric said, where one player is VR and another player, that's Santiago down in the other corner, can play on the same computer locally to create like a local multiplayer experience. Now, the idea behind this was really inspired by a couple of games online, like Dave Ago and Santiago. What was the one with the looking one?
We had so many. We had so many that we
There's
drew
a few
inspiration from, but
It's
like there
getting-
are a few for sure.
Yeah, it's becoming a really popular genre now. I think it has a lot of potential for VR because, I mean, when we were building it, the idea was for a local experience where you have friends sitting on the couch, or even just one-on-one, or if it's more than 2-player game is also possible. And it's laughing, it's fun, it's taking turns with the headset. But now we have to use things like Parsect, which is a great little tool I found that lets Santiago play. We're not in the same home right now, so hopefully there's not too much lag, but I'm going to stop talking because I want to play.
All right.
Santiago, let's start us off.
Okay, yeah, so here we go. So I'm playing as a ghoul, and I am basically just... My goal is to find Zed and eat him. So here we go. I have all these paintings here that are basically function like as portals, where I can traverse to and get into the house. One of the main things that we wanted to achieve with the game was to have like a very solid separation between how the VR player sees the game and how I, as the ghost, see the game. So we installed this filter as well. One of the main mechanics is to, as the ghoul, is that I can turn off lights. You can see the VR player over there. And yeah, so like that's one of the main mechanics. The other one is for me to hide, so I'm a little bit faster than the VR player as well. I can always go back into my main spawn point in a sense and go through all the paintings. Zed, do you want to say a little bit about your gameplay?
Yeah, so I have this kind of telekinesis ability, which was a design decision that came from the fact that throwing in VR is hard. We tried, and I mean, I want to try more because there's some games I've played recently that do it really well. So I'd like to give that another try. And I don't want to get eaten. That's pretty much it. We'll get out of here. And these candles you see here, they protect me because I think on Santiago's screen you can... Oh my god, stop. No, slow down. You can see that there's like a wall for him. It's a wall of light he can't pass. So we had to find it's a wall of light. My item can't pass either. Oh, stop it. Yeah, and I can relight those, and that's how I stay alive. My actual main goal, though, and it's very scary. Hard to talk and play at the same time because I don't want to lose. This is for all the marbles. Is I have to burn all the paintings because, as he was showing you before, is that you? There's masks everywhere. I don't know if it's you or not. Oh my god. All of the paintings are access points into the mortal realm. And if I burn them all, and make sure he is in his realm when they're burned, I think I win. I mean, I've banished the ghoul back to his realm, and this was a really fun project. I learned a lot about VR development. I made some people sick. Subjected classmates and professors to weird experimental control schemes. And yeah, I don't even know how many... You go ahead.
Yeah. So Sed was the programmer in the team, and I was the art director. And one of the issues that I found, like one of the problems that I wanted to solve with the art, just with the art overall, is how to utilize the items in more than one way. So rather than just filling up the space with objects and like things like we can throw and look at, I also try to add stuff that. Hello?
Oh, I should have showed it. No, I totally forgot about it.
Yeah.
All right.
So another thing that I wanted to solve is just to add spaces behind the objects that we use, or like for the ghoul to hide behind, on top of, beneath of, and sort of kind of solve the issue of like not being visible, right? Because that's kind of what you don't want to be visible as the ghoul.
Meet me in the library. I don't know where you are right now, but you can demonstrate.
Oh, there you are.
Oh, hi.
Yeah, so another thing that we added to as the visual aspect is, so you can see the house is upside down for the ghoul, and this also allows me to navigate the space in a way that is just different and would look awkward to the VR player. But yeah. Should I eat you?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay.
Hold on.
What are some of the challenges you encountered in trying to develop this sort of VR style game?
So the main problem that we wanted to solve is to allow other people to play that might not have the VR headset at home, because like at this point VR is still kind of like a niche thing for a lot of people. Like it's still kind of expensive for a lot of people as well. So we wanted to just be able to have something that people can just switch out or just play separated. Like at this moment, I don't have a VR headset, so it's cool that I can still play my game that I created even if I'm far away and without a VR headset. Seth, go ahead.
Yeah, like that's why I think this genre has a lot of potential. I call it a genre, but I don't know if that's the right word. But just the idea of making VR more inclusive and more play options. But some technical challenges, which like I faced, were definitely things like, hold on, let me set it up. I'm gonna just step through the wall, and now I'm outside the level. It's creepier out here, actually. It's dealing with stuff like this and trying to still make the game playable. I think you have to rely a lot on the kind of the social contract of you're playing a game. In a lot of ways, it feels like when you and your friends decide to play hide and seek or tag, like you know the rules. Anyone at any time could break the rules, but you just trust that you won't because the game is better when you don't. So it's hard. It's really hard to like program those kinds of rules I found into the gameplay. Oh, there he is.
Hit him on the mug. Terrifying gremlin.
So if there's any other questions, please go ahead.
Is it possible to see the Eric McQuiggan painting again at some point?
Yeah, Santiago, just eat me, and then we'll start a new game.
Oh yeah, okay. Give me a second. Yeah.
And then, hey.
This is super cool. There's been a couple people in the chat talking about even just like that what you're doing where the ghoul is on the ceiling and that little visual trick in differentiation between the two. Also, holy shit, look at that. If you haven't seen Eric McQuiggan in a few years at Rectangles, this is exactly how he looks right now. Teaching all his classes out in Niagara like this.
You see that. You see that in a lot of horror movies. I'm thinking of specifically The Exorcist 3, the one with who's that guy that played the general in Doctor Strangelove? I can't remember his name, but he was in The Exorcist 3. And there's a specific scene where there's just like an old lady suddenly like on the ceiling, like just sort of out of nowhere, because she's like possessed by the devil or whatever. Not the devil, but the demon that's in those movies. And it's a very effective. It's a very effective trope. I think Hereditary does that as well, right? I can't remember.
I don't remember. This is super cool. So like, is this? So you guys did this for like a school project, I think, right? Correct?
Yeah, this was our final capstone project. We call it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's next? Or is this like, are you guys done with this now? Do you want to keep poking away at it, or like what happens?
Oh, did you get me? Yeah, well, we've talked a lot about it, and I think it's at a point where it's just a natural stopping point, and there's so many things we'd like to do. I'm gonna take this off and look at the camera now. To improve upon it, and like different gameplay mechanics, different characters, different all this stuff we want to do, but ultimately, like, it feels done, and like, don't want to like overpaint the details. And if anything, I want to keep exploring the asymmetric VR space, and games are something I really enjoy, so that'll come into it. And there might be like a spiritual successor or something similar to that, but Flicker is done. I have it on my itch page. It is buggy, but it is playable if anyone ever wanted to try it. But
yeah, we'll post the link. We'll post the link up in chat for it.
Please do, yeah.
It's best to just stop because we've also been away from it for a while too. So
it was also 8 months, right? Like, it was 8 months of just working at it and like looking at it, and yeah, like it taught us a lot, and it was definitely a really good beginning to all of the things that we keep on, like, we do want to keep on going on with and keep making. But yeah, it just feels like it feels complete. It feels like this is what we wanted to make. And this is something that we can now show, and we're really grateful towards you guys for letting us show it, because one of the main things that we were kind of sad about were all the conventions that got canceled throughout this entire time, and we weren't able to really display what we worked on so hard. So I'm really glad that we were able to even show it here. Sure.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Great work.
Provide, man. A cyberspace space.
Yeah.
There was a question about what all the portraits were of.
Oh, okay. So they were just like all our classmates and teachers that allowed me to make paintings of them. I was really grateful to that they just allowed me to juxtapose like ready-made paintings, basically, and I just slapped their faces on them and had a lot of fun with that. Yeah, I'm really glad that everybody was okay with it, and it was a nice way to kind of like put a bow on it, to just show, just being thankful towards my team and the teachers that helped us throughout the last 2 years.
That's cool.
It was really fun coming up with like Easter eggs and stuff too. Like, we had lots of ideas. One we ended up with is on all of the different books. We put like the emblems or different logos or characters from our classmates' other games, like their capstone projects, and we tried to include them into ours. And we had a classmate who put our ghoul, that the character Santiago was playing, in their game as like a little sidekick, and that was really fun. Like this like cross-pollination of game assets and ideas was really exciting for me.
Somebody else in chat was asking if this was just a local multiplayer thing, or if you had any sort of like online like sort of multiplayer capability. I'm pretty sure you don't, because I know how complicated that would be.
But we're playing online right now. Like Santiago,
we are,
is in a different house.
Yeah, we are.
And
a different house.
I'll try to update the itch page with some instructions, because it's just using the Parsec gaming tool, which is kind of like Steam Remote Play for anything that's not on Steam. And it's smooth. I mean, like, basically no lag.
Yeah, seems good.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and the multiplayer thing, very early on we decided to go against having more than one ghoul, just because there's so many cameras we were able to render, I think was one of the issues with that. So yeah.
Jarosco asks, is there anything, any original ideas you had to cut due to the VR nature of the game?
Well, Chris, that's Chris, right? Yeah, right. I guess like we had a lot of different ideas in the brainstorming phase. It was so hard to remember that it was a VR game, especially because not our whole team was very familiar with VR. It was my first like big VR project, so I can't think of anything specifically.
I can think of one. I can think of like we wanted a lot of like movable walls and like you being able to find other items that would have certain properties to them. So like I think the one that we were the most excited about was if you move a library wall, then you can find a sword, and that sword insta kills the ghoul, and it makes you just win right away. But yeah, like eventually we had to like really keep the scope like very small because it was getting out of hand at one point.
Yeah.
A lot of things were wish listed for sure.
Of course.
But yeah.
Excellent.
Cool.
Cool.
And
Well, thanks, guys. This was super amazing.
Could you
Thank you.
post
Thanks so much.
the itch page into chat so we have a link to it?
As soon as I turn off all of these recording screens, I'll get to it.
I also have I do have a tiny red dragon. So.
Oh
yeah, you do indeed.
Well, don't go anywhere yet.
Yeah, we have a real good pipeline of like OBS instances and Discord instances and Twitch instances going on right now.
Yeah, streams all the way down.
Yep.
Cool. All right, we're gonna take a quick 2-minute break, and we'll be back with some more presenters.
Thank
you so
everyone.
much.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, folks.
Bye.
All right, everybody, we are back with our next presenter of the night, rolling through with these super fast transitions. I love it. We got here Coley and Nathan. How's it going?
Hey, pretty good.
Whoop, whoop.
Yeah, so this is our game called Here and There that we made for Toe Jam this year with a few other people, Micromaniac, Ian Wong, and Caitlin Mental Pop. We worked together and we made this, which is more of an experiment than a game. It's a VR experience, a prototype where your ears are they're disconnected from your body. If you picture, like, if you've seen Toy Story, Mr. Potato Head has the ability to sort of take his ears off of his head and hear what they're hearing from a distance. So we just took that idea and ran with it. So you have your ears are actually off of your head and you're hearing from their perspective. So you have to search around this little room and find your ears. And yeah, as you can hear, like as she's holding it closer to the toaster, you can hear, or to the clock, you can hear the sounds that it's making. And as it's closer to the phone, you can hear that as well. Yeah, and if she, yeah. And you can also take the ear once you found it and put it right on your head, and it'll stick, and then it'll be where it's supposed to be on your head, and then you'll be hearing normally from it. So yeah, now she's found one of her ears, and now she just has to find the other one. We managed to get in just a really simple game loop just to test out the concept. So you just have to find the 2 ears. And we tried to hide the ears in such a way that they're not super plainly visible. We want the audio cues to be the guiding factor in helping you find what you're looking for. So we also put in a bunch of sound emitting objects in the room, like that speaker, like the clock, like the vibrating phone, and they're all unique sounds. Yeah, so if you hear, the clock is really loud in my right ear, then it's likely that your right ear is close to the clock, so you know sort of where to look based on what you can hear. And we tried to put sounds on all of the objects that you can interact with, trying to make it as soundy as possible, so that the ears have some purpose, and you can feel the presence of the world. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, I can look in the chat, try and answer stuff.
This is super cool. It's one of those things where it's like, I think the chat is caught between how adorable this all looks, but also how cool of a game mechanic this is. Particularly, this is one of those things you could really only do in VR, right? Like
exactly, yeah.
To do to this level. This is so cool. I have a background in sound design, so this is ticking some boxes for me.
Yeah, the fact that it is a VR game, it really does take it up a step in in sort of making your body feel weird, because you're not used to perceiving sound in that way. It sort of warps your brain a little more than I think it would if you were just playing in a first-person perspective.
That's so cool. So how did you handle all these sounds then? Like, if you're putting sounds for everything, did you guys record all this stuff yourself, or are you grabbing things online, or this was a jam game, I guess, right? So
yeah, you'd have to ask Micromaniac to get the full answer. He's the sound designer for this project, so he came up with all the sounds. I don't know if he got most of them off the internet or
Escape
Yeah.
character asked, so the no shading is a really cool art choice, and they're wondering, like, does it look weird in VR to not have shading on objects and just have that flat shaded, no lighting look?
In my experience, no. Yeah, it doesn't seem as weird as you might think. Like, it's not realistic, but at the same time, you feel like you're in a space just because with VR and everything is to scale. You just sort of, at some point, you learn to, suspend your disbelief and accept that you're in a cartoon universe. Sort of like, the same way that you get immersed into non-VR games that don't have realistic graphics.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the aesthetic works pretty well. I mean, as long as in VR it's cohesive, I think it works.
Totally.
Yeah, and
Yeah, I mean, everybody in chat is saying that they really like it. Somebody compared it to a Belgian movie from the 90s. Other people are saying that, yeah, just the visuals are really cool, the color palette is phenomenal. Someone was saying that the phone is making a sound in my left speaker because of the IoT devices I have laying around. I thought I had to check to see if they were buzzing.
That's funny.
Also, I think someone has put on their VR helmet to sort of experience it like in VR while you're doing it in VR, which is pretty funny to me.
I appreciate that you included the most important mechanic for any VR game, which is the ability to throw things around.
Of course.
It's very critical.
Yeah, that's just an expectation. Yeah, and we wanted to make it have some mechanical significance, so you'd be able to make sounds by, throwing stuff. Like you throw the keys and then you hear them near your right ear, so you know your right ear is nearby. Stuff like that. Yes, actually, one of the things that we wanted to try but had to scope down for the game jam was we wanted to let you take out your eyes and search for those too. Yeah, as if VR isn't motion sickness inducing enough.
Oh yeah, no, your eyeball rolling across the floor would definitely not.
Yeah, but I mean, I still want to try that someday. Just like, even if it makes me throw up, I want to try it like a roller coaster kind of thing,
Well worth it.
I'm not sure if that came out over the stream, but I asked your question, Hex Noir, so that's why he was answering it. I think I forgot to turn on my mic volume before I asked it. Well, this is great.
Escape character in the chat asks, what if you took your feelings and put them somewhere you couldn't find them?
As soon as VR advances and that becomes the next source of output, we're gonna experiment with that.
I think there's a Unity Asset Store asset for that, actually.
Oh, cool.
We need feelings, we need smell-o-vision, we need a lot of different things.
Is this on itch.io or anything? Is this in a playable state? Because I would love to try this out, like with my VR headset.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed, it is on itch.io. Let me see if I can get you the link.
Link it in chat. I feel like there'd be other people who are interested to try it as well. That'd be great.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Alright.
Well, thank you so much, guys. I guess we'll
Yeah, this is super cool.
go on to go to our next presenter soon.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Let's get some Doritos in the chat for all the VR we're seeing tonight. Now is the time. There they go. All right, cool. Thank you guys so much. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes. We got 2 more presenters lined up for y'all tonight, and then we're gonna go to bed.
Alright, and audio is now not live.
That's awesome. That's so fun. So cool. Thank you guys so much. Alright, who we got here now? I think next is Eddie, right?
Yeah, who's up next?
Eddie is in.
Okay, alright, let's share this screen here.
What's going on, buddy?
Hello. I couldn't decide if the King Messel reference was appropriate or not.
Apparently the audio is still live. Maybe.
All right, we are back with our penultimate presenter of the evening, Mr. Eddie Cotreau. What's going on, Eddie?
Yeah, hey.
What-
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I'm showing my game here. I'm going to take this headphone out of my ear. I don't like hearing myself while I'm talking. Yeah, hello. So I'm making a dungeon crawling RPG. If you've been to the Dirty Rectangles in Ottawa, you've seen this before. But for everybody else, I'm going to kind of go through what I got so far. So you're this character here, running around a procedural dungeon. I got the dungeon map up in the corner there. I'm this kind of little red dot here. And so what you have to do in this game is find a crystal. This crystal is this little other red dot. I'm sorry if this is very small on the stream here, and you got to take it to this other slightly bigger dot, which is an apparatus, to put the crystal in, and then you exit before this little black triangle, which is the boss of the dungeon, before that big baddie finds you and beats you up. So in order to crawl through this dungeon, we got our character here with some light attacks, we got some heavier attacks, combination of both, that sort of thing.
All these animations, they're
what's
so
that?
good.
Oh,
I'm just commenting on your animations. For people who have come to, like you mentioned before, Eddie's been showing this off incrementally for, I don't know, 6 months, 7 months, maybe?
It's just over a year now, I think.
Wow.
Wow.
It's been super cool to see this sort of come along. I'm going to try and not comment too much, but I'm excited to see where this is at right now.
Yeah, thanks. So I got some potions here in this action menu. I can use those. It's got all kinds of, RPG stuff. I got a fire spell here. I'm going to what you do with these spells is first you read a scroll, and then you'll kind of equip it, and then you can zoom in and then kind of just shoot it like that. You can hold it to charge it, and then it'll be a bigger AoE kind of area of effect shot there. There's different elements. We got fire, stone, metal, water, and the wood element, or the elements in the game. Let's see, we got different abilities here that do different things. I'm pretty sure none of these crash the game anymore. I'm not going to use any. And then we also got these weapon skills here, which we can, they're special attacks. We can use them on an enemy. As we go deeper in, the frame rate is going to get real low. So bear with me here. We got this one enemy here. I know for a fact this one has one ability that does crash the game, so I'm not going to attack it just in case. But I am going to find a different one. Bats. Bats are fine. Bats are okay. So we're going to attack this guy here. We're down to 8 frames per second. Oh, yeah. And so the combat is kind of real time, just like that. Different enemies will spawn throughout. Let's go over here a little bit. I'm looking for a tree right now, a tree enemy. There's one. These guys right now have the most HP, so I can show the special abilities, which I think the first time I use it, it's going to slow down a lot, but then the rest of the time it should.
I love the eyes on those bats. They're very good.
They're so cute.
Someone was asking in chat if this is a Godot game.
Yes, it's made with Godot. Yeah. I'm going to explain what I did just there. So what happens is you have these different weapon skills, which each have an element associated with them. So I used, well, the Dire Strike doesn't have an element, but then after I can use the Cinder Blade, which does have fire attached to it, which will then create a... that didn't work. Let's try that again. Which will then create a heat special effect, which will then make them more susceptible to fire. And then I can use another one, and I think, no, I waited too long, but then it would, after that one, do another kind of elemental attack. I added knockback recently, and right now, trees in particular, for some reason, go really far back when they get a critical hit. I'm just going to finish this guy off real quick, and then we can move on. There we go. He's done.
What is this slinky guy hanging from the ceiling? He kind of looks like he's in like.
Yeah, this was supposed to be. this was supposed to be like a thicket. I don't know if anybody. I saw this cool drawing from Magic the Gathering that was this thicket elemental. That was this big kind of thing that looked. Well, not really like this, I guess, but looked like this, but cooler. A bunch of tangled thickets. Making
all I can remember is Wall of Wood, so I can't help you, unless that's what you mean.
No, it was. It definitely was called Thicket Elemental. It didn't look like this. It looked a lot cooler.
Someone was saying that this sort of has a Phantasy Star Online kind of vibe. I agree. It does.
So I'm actually, I'm just going to pull up my map while I talk here. So I'm going to move towards the crystal. That's
Look
not
at the
the way
size
to
of
go.
this dungeon.
Yeah, so it's each of these blocks. There's how big is? I think there's 65,000 of them. That's how big it is. It's 17 by 17 rooms, and each room has 15 by 15 cells. So that turns into whatever that is. We got a treasure chest here. I'm going to open this treasure chest. We got some items that might come in handy. Antidotes don't work yet. Potions do though.
I was the most psyched about the antidote. I was like, yes. Now if you get poison status, you'll be okay.
So I can poison myself because we got here. Do I have it? Poison. So I'm just going to equip poison now. And status effect spells are area of effect only. You have to charge them, and then you can hit yourself with it with area of effect. So right now I'm poison.
If you shoot it at a wall right in front of you, yeah.
Yeah, I had to test to make sure it worked, and then I thought, you know what? Let's just keep that in there for now. I'm gonna see if the antidote works. No, it doesn't. I think it hurt me. Okay. Anyway, so we're gonna move towards this crystal. Anyway, yeah. But back to Phantasy Star Online. My main inspiration is actually Final Fantasy XI. If anyone's played that, if anyone got to the what the heck was it called? Tulia is the name of it. It's kind of like this palace in the sky. That was kind of my main inspiration for this area. But what this is a buried palace that was once floating in the sky, and you have to find all the different crystals to reactivate it. 5 dungeons, one dungeon per element. We're down to 7 FPS. Oh, 6. The poison's going to wear off soon. Now I'm going to...
So you're the little pink dot on the minimap, right? Somebody was saying it was a little bit hard to tell what your character was on the minimap.
Oh yeah, it's really small. It's can you see my mouse? It's this
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it before.
That one right there. That's where we are right now. And then
initially I thought maybe the black arrow or like the black triangle was you.
That's the boss, right?
Yeah, it's the boss. We can swing by there. It's just a placeholder
Definitely.
right now. It's just like a really big version of a regular enemy. It's that guy right there. Right now, I'm in the middle of writing pathfinding for him to chase you around.
Oh my God,
No
this
other
is
video, no other video game has ever taken that shortcut for bosses. So don't worry.
Can we see his beautiful, beautiful face again?
Yeah, this is the map slows things down. Not that it's going to make it much better, but this is. Oh, actually, it would also be better if I turned off all these decorations. So this is a Shisa. It's a lion dog from Okinawa. They're
cool.
like guardians, and so these regular enemies, they spawn in pairs because the Shisa apparently there's always one on each side of a door, one to scare away bad spirits and one to bring in good fortune, something like that. Yeah,
that is a dog I would like to take home with me.
They're really cool. You can I guess like in Okinawa you can buy little figures of them. They're really cool. You can also just Google pictures of them. They got a lot of cool statues all over the world of them. So now we're heading towards the crystal apparatus, and when I put that in, then the dungeon is pretty much cleared. What is going to happen eventually is that as soon as you pick up the crystal, the boss is going to know where you are, and then will come after you. And so that's kind of the main, I guess the main game loop of each dungeon is to find this crystal, avoid or fight the boss, and then you put the crystal, put it in here. We're gonna start it up, and that's it. We've now completed this dungeon. We just gotta get out of here, and then that's it. So that's pretty much all that I have so far. It's kind of a work in progress. I said it earlier, I'm working on pathfinding for enemies because right now they'll just kind of go straight at you. I'm just going to hit this guy. They'll just kind of go straight at you, but then they don't avoid walls or anything like that. So now I'm working on avoiding walls or anything like that. I recently put in, I don't know if it's going to really, if you can really see it happen with such a bad frame rate, but I recently added, you can knock people down, and I added a little button to knock myself down like that. If you knock yourself or enemies into each other, they'll kind of damage each other. I don't think it's going to work. The frame rate's too bad. But I added, if you get knocked down, you can damage yourself when you hit a wall or damage the enemies that you hit along the way. That sort of thing.
Interesting.
And so I think what I'm going to end up doing is redoing some of the combat to make knocking down more of a deliberate choice than just something right now. It only happens if there's a critical hit, but I'd like to make that a bit more deliberate. So
yeah, there's a couple of people in the chat asking about Godot in particular, and for like a project like this. And just sort of like any specific challenges or benefits that you've noticed around using Godot and implementing it inside of a project like at this scale.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to compare to other engines because I've used it now for years. I can close this out and then we can kind of just look at the game project itself. Actually, I'll minimize it just in case somewhere else. Yeah, what can I say about it? It's let's see. I'm gonna pull up the dungeon script. So everything works kind of just you're adding each scene kind of has nested scenes within it, and so by instancing scenes, you can kind of build out a really big dungeon that way. I don't know how the performance compares to Unity or Unreal or something like that, but I really like using this grid map, which lets you place a lot of blocks. I've read very CPU efficiently, and so I didn't really pick this engine specifically for this project. It's just the one that I have been using. And so I kind of just figured out a way to make this whole thing work. It originally started just as a 2D kind of, let's see if I can do this, a 2D map like this using its tile editor, and then I realized, well, hey, I can just kind of convert this using the same coordinates into a 3D space just by keeping the y coordinates at 0, and so the whole thing functionally operates at almost as if it's 2D, but it's with 3D graphics, and so so for that, I found that kind of easy to work with. One thing I really like about Godot is that there are separate views for 2D and 3D, so I can work pretty easily to make a UI, even though this is all just kind of placeholder stuff. I need to redo it. I find working with 2D, a 2D canvas in Godot to be really good. So if anyone is looking to do especially a 2D game, I'd recommend giving Godot a shot. Even for 3D stuff, it's really good, and it's free. It's open source. The community is really nice. They recently got a lot of open source funding, so there is a Godot version 4 that is coming out, which is going to revamp a lot of stuff. And I like it because it's free. There's no royalties to pay on anything like that, and yeah, I like Godot. I like using it. I encourage anyone interested in maybe trying out a different engine to give it a shot.
Yeah, something I'm sort of
Cool.
interested in is if you could just sort of like, from just a very high level, sort of describe like what your procedural generation kind of strategy is for the dungeons.
Yeah, I can do that. Let's see. I'm gonna stop running the game. I'm gonna open up I really hope this generator tester still works. No, it doesn't. We're gonna just have to go into the main. Let's get the decorator. So what happens is first it makes an array of rooms, and it decides we're gonna have a room here, 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 and here, and here. Just kind of wherever to get the basic shape of the dungeon. That's kind of as big as I can get a view of the map. This is showing the array of the rooms. And then within each room, there is a separate array that has the actual cell layout that you see around this room here. And so it generates an array per each of these rooms, first by doing a center, I think it's a 5x5 open space, and all the connections between rooms are based on that 5x5 open space, so that I didn't have to worry about if this room, if its open space was really up to the top, but then it's trying to connect to a next room that is mostly open down below. I didn't have to worry about any of those edge cases. I just connect from 5x5 room to 5x5 room. And then I kind of, let's see, what do I do from there? And then I kind of add, I think I just kind of randomly place open spaces that are between 3 to 5 by 3 by 5 to kind of create rooms, except for this sort of room, which I do have a pool of pre-made layouts. Like this is for the entrance and for different kinds of rooms. Like, I don't know if I can find one in time, to kind of not just have small generated rooms. There's also some bigger ones. I'm gonna see if I can get down to a bigger one real quick. And so it places the pre-made rooms on top of the generated ones after, and then double checks that the connections are still good. And then it places the crystal and the apparatus kind of in a quadrant of the overall. It picks a room within a group of rooms, and then kind of makes sure it doesn't do it perfectly, but it tries to make sure that the crystal, the boss, and the apparatus are not in the same part of the dungeon. This is a really big kind of pillared room that would just absolutely take forever to try to get a procedural generator to build, and so I just have this in a pool of rooms, and you just kind of it just will plunk it in randomly. It still needs a lot of work, but that's generally the approach that I've been taking.
Yeah, something I've been looking at recently, because I'm working on a game right now that's going to be procedurally generated, is just the work of Joris Dormans. He did a lot of work on just kind of like trying to reverse engineer how like Zelda dungeons work, and then basically create generators to kind of generate them. And so his whole method is sort of like, you create sort of like a graph of like what the objectives of the player are, and then you create your actual like map of tiles from that. So he kind of has a sort of like, you have an entrance and you have a goal, and then you start to basically like make it more complicated from there, like almost in sort of like an exponential pattern. Like you create maybe a locked door and then a key for that door, and then maybe you move that key so that it's behind an enemy, and then you just keep extrapolating out from there to sort of make it more and more complex. And then the other thing he was talking about also was creating like circuitous routes in the dungeon rather than linear ones, because those are sort of more interesting for people. So the kind of idea of like, you go past something, something closes behind you, and then you have to make your way back to where you were in the first place, kind of situation, that kind of stuff. The idea of like valves and these kinds of things. So yeah, no, it's definitely interesting stuff to look up if you're working on procedural design for, specifically for dungeons and that kind of thing. I think it's very interesting. Joris Dorman. work has been neat. He did it a couple of years ago, but I think it's still very useful.
Yeah, that sounds useful. Could you drop that name into the chat or something?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that-
I'll post a link to maybe some of his talks or something.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. I think that's pretty much it. I think the frame rate's now good enough that I maybe knock into these guys, and then they'll knock each other around. And I guess I'll just end on this, unless anybody has questions. That's pretty much what I've been up to recently.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, this is awesome, Eddie. I love our little every now and month, every couple of months we get a little update on this thing, and it's not quite like an entirely different game, but it might as well be. Like the amount of work that you put into it and the features that you add into it and the little things that you do is it's been a really cool thing to sort of follow along. So thanks for sharing the process with us, right? Like and being open to going from like scratch basically, and like this is my game. I have no idea where it's going to go and what it's going to look like, but you're going to show it off, and we'll see where it goes. Right? Very, very cool.
Yeah, I post kind of updates because I work so slowly. It's not my job. Pretty much every little thing I add to it. I think we froze. I think it happens when too many items try to drop at once. Yeah, I post small updates to Twitter all the time. So if anyone wants to follow along with this, bear_cabin is where I'm at if you're interested in following along on that.
Cool. Well, thanks so much, Eddie. We're going to take one more quick break, and then we're going to come back with our last game of the night. We'll check that. Oh, watch out.
People, but 4-6, same number, right?
So, yeah, that's what they say.
I only got my mic on.
Yeah. Let's get some more Doritos in the chat for Eddie here while we pop away to our little amazing bumper. We'll see you guys in a minute. All right, everybody, we are back with our final presentation of the night. We have with us Team Dadstination. Take it away, crew.
Hello.
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 We all introduce ourselves?
Yeah, we
Sure.
should.
Yeah, that's a good idea, yeah. You all go first.
Oh.
Hi,
wait,
I'm
in
Dustin.
what order? I'm Steph. I'm Penny.
Kezia.
And this is Final Dadstination, a road trip to remember, where
We are all dads.
we are all dads.
Toe Jam 2020.
Yes, in this game, the player you're playing you, and you're playing you with your dads. They're on a road trip to pick you up. So you build, and then you build a series of dads. You place them in different spots in the car, and they're trying to survive this road trip to come get you.
Yeah, you're about to be born and fall out of space, and when that happens, you're gonna need dads, not just one, but probably a lot of them.
To fall in love too. We need to find love and family and acceptance. No, but I think the main thing that we kind of all came into this Toe Jam wanting to accomplish was to create a character creator. I think that was one of the the key things. And this game kind of evolved from there. A little bit organically as we just kept spamming ideas at one another, and it became this thing, this creation.
I think when we were talking about, hey, we want to spend time making a character creator, and we want to do it. We want most of the game to be character creation. It was well, obviously it's a road trip where you're picking people up along the way, and obviously they're all dads, and they're all in a group marriage, and they're all your dad.
Yeah, all of these things logically just felt like they fit together. Each time we would add one of these, it was oh yeah, that's perfect. Oh god, he's got the baseball eyes.
Good. I love these eyes.
We didn't have time to implement it, but each part of the dad, every dad asset has its own name, and these eyes are representing what happens when your son is really good at baseball and you're stunned. So there's and also I think he's wearing the suspicious mustache. I don't know. There's a lot of it was
Sorry,
very
I
fun.
totally butchered what you were doing and just named them Mouse 1, Mouse 2, Mouse 3.
There was no we
It's
had
very
no time
programmery for me to do, but
implement anything. But I had fun naming them.
Alright, do you think this is a good dad? I think
I think this is a phenomenal
I'm
dad.
satisfied with this dad.
I'm very
He's
okay.
a nerdy dad.
Yeah. So each of the parts that you choose on creation of the dad applies to specific dad stats, and you've got positives and negatives based on, I guess, what you select. So basically, this dad is a nerdy dad with lots of filler text to flavor him. But basically, there's going to be challenges along the way.
To flavor the dad?
To flavor the dad, that's right. So there's challenges that everyone has to face on the road trip, and you have to choose the right dad to tackle this problem. And their stats are going to play into that, as you guys will see.
Stat types total that they can have, tools, gumption, charisma, frugal, savvy, and pragmatic. So in place of strength, stamina,
Exactly.
what you'd see in your standard sort of game. All right, so we made one dad, so we have to make another.
That's pretty
every
beautiful.
time
That's quite a dad.
Yeah, if you go into the character generator, it randomizes a dad, of course, and I think I like this dad. He's looking pretty good. We want to say he's done. He does. Let's
I
go
hate that
done.
he's wearing two mustaches.
We're gonna go with that. I like it, and they're both different colors.
Yeah, they're completely different.
Oh, that's another nerdy
Another
dad.
nerdy dad. This will be an interesting road trip.
Yeah, this will be interesting. He has different stats though.
Yeah.
All right, so it's time for an encounter.
So
So
along
you
the
gotta.
road trip, yeah, you
Yes.
have to. You'll get random encounters, and then you choose which dads are going out on that encounter.
Yes.
So currently, we have 2 dads, and this encounter requires 2 dads, so it's just both of them.
All right, so we're gonna start the next encounter, and they all have nice flavor text.
Yes. So in this encounter, they need to figure out their expenses for the trip as they go. So they have to budget. How well can your dads budget? So you've got 2 nerdy dads. Let's do it.
See how they do. Partial failure. Oh no.
That's unexpected.
though.
69.
Nice.
So as you go on your trip, you have 3 resources that are remaining. It's the amount of money you have left, it's the amount of snacks you have, and the amount of time you have left. You need to pick up yourself, like Sunday at 7 p.m. I think. And if you don't get there on time, then you're out of time.
Yeah.
And then the dads turn the car around, and you're a big failure.
Gotta get that bean
Kemp
juice.
is getting coffee. They need their bean juice. Total failure. Oh no.
my goodness.
Nerdy dads, they could not pull that one off.
Yeah. They tried to flirt with the dad bay, and they just couldn't. They just embarrassed themselves.
Someone in the Twitch chat is calling it Dad FTL, which I think is hilarious.
Oh yes. Oh, that's great.
Magnificent.
The Tim Hortons picture was all of these images are like royalty-free images that I found primarily on Pexels because I'm a notorious user of Pexels, and the Tim Hortons one was just really powerful. It was like a last second having to fix assets.
I'd like to point out that using found assets in your art style is a very the form is called Dadaist.
Magnificent.
Lovely. All right, so this encounter is broken
goodness.
GPS.
These dads are nerds. I feel like they should be able to do this.
They
So
got
managed
partial success.
Yeah. They still managed to keep going. So as you can see at the bottom, we've got money, hunger, and time. So they've got a weekend to complete this road trip, a certain amount of funds, and also, comfort through food. And when the dads get too hungry, they get a bit hangry. So you kind of want to avoid running out of all of these time, money, and comfort, I guess. Hunger.
Someone in the chat said Oregon Trail, definitely.
Yes.
We were thinking. I was thinking about that constantly while we were working on this.
Yeah, the how much we leaned into the dadness was important to us, and we talked about what stats are relevant for what we care about dads, what we want from dads, or the kind of model of dad masculinity as opposed to regular video game masculinity. We were like, well, what's kind of charming and cute and reliable about that? We had none of these dads they all kind of look rumpled in their own stupid ways.
Yeah. But they're all charming in their own ways too.
Yeah.
Oh, and for certain encounters, only one dad can get sent out. So in this one, flat tire, the nerdy dad couldn't do it, so they had to call a tow truck. So that wasted some time and money. Oh no.
This has been a rough dad trip so far.
This has been a rough dad
They're
trip.
not so great.
These are not all-star dads.
No. We haven't even gotten... Oh, so another thing is that along the way, if you get a full success roll, you can recruit a new dad in certain scenarios. So let's see if we can do that. Oh no, we definitely not on this one.
Damn it.
Dads are so repugnant. They can't get any more dads to join their polycule.
Oh man, Bobson Dugnut could just
Yeah, we
totally
couldn't
blew
do
his
it.
shot.
Yeah, I wrote that previous one, and then I put in Bobson Dugnut, which is a reference to I don't even know what the game was, but it was like this Japanese game, and they had to come up with English names, and Bobson Dugman's one of them. You've probably seen the meme.
It's such a powerful meme.
It's so powerful.
It's a very powerful name.
Can someone post the meme in the chat if you want?
There was a similar one in Death Note that had like similarly hilarious.
I think I wrote
names of Americans.
Names of America. I think I wrote this flavor text at like 3 a.m. on like one of the final days.
We got pretty deep into it at some point.
Yeah.
Oh, this one's a good one.
Partial success. These darn dads.
I
think
know.
as a combined group, they have like no charisma.
Yeah, it's because we ended up with two nerdy dads. We didn't like spec into like a multi-class.
Yeah.
Like, balanced dad setup.
I think we need to write a walkthrough how to optimize your dads. Can
Yeah.
you go through? I've never been able to beat it.
Oh, we're nearly out of money. We might have to turn this around.
You've never.
Oh,
We
someone
might have
put the
to-
meme on the screen. Thank you.
Oh,
Whoever did
beautiful.
that.
Oh no,
Yes.
no vacancy.
Perfect.
Oh
Oh
no!
no.
That wasn't very bad of you.
Oh no.
I will turn this car around.
And they did.
Mm. And then your little alien self just never got. You fell out of space and you didn't even get adopted.
No.
Yeah.
The opposite of
Sad to think about.
Superman.
If it wasn't completely clear, the motive is to for your dads to come meet you at Area 51 and adopt you, the alien space baby.
Yeah, there's an Area 51 encounter. That's probably the
Spoilers.
last one. I wrote it, and I don't remember it. Yes, I think that's it. Is there anything else anyone wants to say?
It was a lot of fun.
Oh, it was a blast making
Yeah,
this. I
this was
loved
amazing.
making this. Oh, if you want to check it out, it is on itch.io. You can play it in browser. You can download it. See if you can beat it, because clearly we can't. Well, I can't.
I hope you guys roll better dads than we did.
I'm
Yes.
notoriously bad at video games, so I'm surprised if I can't do it. These dads are from a CD of stock photos that my school newspaper had that I like borrowed for a weekend and crashed through the floor twice while downloading all the stock images. And they were so heartwarming. I kept sending them to our ToeJam chat, and we got locked into this idea of like, hey, what if we make a game about dads?
We needed to use as many of these dad sets as
I was like,
possible.
please, we have to use these insane dad sets. They're so
Yeah, the game was
wild.
definitely centered around like we need to use these dad sets. Like we
Yeah.
need a game that uses these, and this is what we came up with.
Yeah, I quite like that. Like, often when I've done like game jams, we like kind of just get together like a couple days before. But like this, we kind of like knew 2 or 3 months in advance that like it'd be us on a team doing a game jam, and kind of we just had this like group chat we could like make dumb jokes in until like eventually we settled on like dad road trip, and we already had a bunch of like in jokes about it, and it's not like we were like talking, you know, hours a day in this group chat, but like we would like send each other goofy relevant links for like a month or two leading up to the game jam, and it was great.
We were very prepared, but I think
Yeah,
my
I think
favorite
it's pretty
part.
Yeah, we were so ready,
We
but
were
then we
so
also
ready.
still ended up scrambling. I feel like we were almost too ready because we were.
Yeah.
We were like
we definitely had a lot of hubris.
There was too much we wanted to still do, but I think my favorite part of the game jam was seeing the real life dadspiration that we would get sent. So like Dustin, Kezia, and Penny would like send over texts from their dads and like status updates, like Dad is trying to start a fire. It's like, oh my god, let's write that into an encounter. What
Oh,
stat
yeah,
would
one
that
thing-
be?
One thing that wasn't clear is like also when they're in the van, there's like random audio barks that Penny
Oh, yeah.
wrote, or just like a speech will pop up, and they'll just say some like dad content, like, oh, we should get out and like check the air pressure, or like, has anyone thought about tax season yet?
More
Stuff like that.
than one of those is based off of real texts that my dad has sent me, which are specifically one of them that is like talking about how Microsoft 365 is such a good deal is actually I'm not in Microsoft's pocket. That's just verbatim something my dad has said to me. He's obsessed.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, the writing and just like the
Allen
aesthetic.
keys,
so good.
and that's one of the voices.
Wow. Okay. I think Destination was a fantastic way to cap off this night. Thank you guys so much for showing that off.
Thanks a
If
lot.
there's any questions in the chat, feel free to throw them out there. I think at this point we're just going to have a quick little chat here as we sort of sign things off. And if Team Destination wants to hang out in this chat with us, you're more than welcome. It is your honor for being the last person of the night to also stick around for our goodbyes. Thank you so much, everybody. Yeah, let's get some more Doritos in the chat for Destination, as well as like everyone else who's been showing up tonight and showing off all these amazing games. It's been the second month that we've done this, and 15 minutes before it started, everything was on fire, and here we are now at the end of the show. So we did it.
Not too bad, all things considered. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So we also need some more Doritos in the chat for James as well for pulling the AV duties this week. At exceptionally short notice and making it all come together. Cool. Thanks everybody in the chat for coming out, for joining us. We're going to be doing this again next month. You know, if you want to show off a game on Dirty Rectangles Online, you just reach out to us here. You can message us on... Can you do that? I don't know. Message us on Twitter. You should message us on Twitter. It's an easier way for us to get a hold of you. You can get us at Dirty Rectangles or at rectangles_TO for the Toronto chapter. Either way works. And then we'll hook you up on our Discord, and we'll kind of go from there.
We also do presentation requests via the Discord if you want to post something a little more specifically and less randomly that Twitter happens at.
Anybody you want to say any final words here before we ship off?
Yeah, everything went pretty good. I think, you know, this month was tough. You know, a lot of stuff happened, you know, in the world around us right before we were doing this month, and you know, I think a lot of us were sort of prioritizing a lot of things more than just, you know, the silly sort of game get-together that we do once a month, and so it was tricky to line stuff up. Definitely next month we want to try to make an effort to showcase some developers that are people of color, that are that come from like an indigenous background, a First Nations background, that kind of thing. Yeah, there just wasn't enough time to kind of get in touch with people. I think as game makers, we all know, you know, it often takes a long time to kind of get game projects together, and especially to get them into a condition where we really want to show them to other people. So it was a little bit last notice to kind of get anybody together. But yeah, no, thanks for everybody who presented this month. A lot of people that presented this month, you know, they all volunteered to step down in the situation that we had somebody else to present that was maybe like a person of color or somebody like that. So thank you for that. Thank you for the graciousness of that. Yeah, no, we're definitely going to make that a priority for next month, for sure. Now that, you know, we have some lead up time, and it's not so much of an ask to try to get somebody set up for that. But yeah, no, all things considered, I think everything went well. I think everybody had fun. I think we had a good mix of, you know, not taking the sort of moment too lightly, but then also, you know, staying in our lane in terms of, like, you know, providing a fun time for everybody. So yeah, no, I think it went well.
Yeah, just to build on that, like we threw out at the very beginning and throughout the course of the night a couple of links in the chat for places you could donate and places where you could go and take action. We'll update our page here with some extra links as well, so all that won't be lost, as well as in our YouTube page, and you'll see us pushing that out on Twitter as well for the foreseeable future. Yeah, so thanks everyone for coming out and talking about video games for a little bit. I guess we got to go back to real life now and take care of that sort of stuff. Any other final words from anyone else before we ship off?
If you are still here in the chat, you have made it to the end of the second ever Intercity Online Dirty Rectangles You are a completionist. You have made it.
Yeah.
This outro video I gotta play, Derek. Is there sound for this, or do I gotta play music?
There is sound for it. It's all good. We got one more video for you guys, and you guys can go home. I suppose the last thing that we should say before we follow into the video is Black Lives Matter, Trans Lives Matter. Go take action, and we'll see you next month.
See ya, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Thanks, folks. Are we muted now? Can we talk?